Welcome to the audio conferencing center. Please enter a conference ID followed by pound.
If you're the meeting organizer, press star now.
You're now joining the meeting.
Task Force in Indianapolis.
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
We've taken 250 illegal firearms off the streets of Fishers. Of those, more than 60% come back to violent crimes in Indianapolis. Now, these are numbers I may be repeating to you because you've heard this goal before, but what I want to bring you up to speed on is some of the things that the mayor and I have been up to since this goal has come online. The city attorney, Dreisel, myself, and the mayor begin to pen a legislative narrative to embolden the gun crime task force in Indianapolis. We did that. We submitted it and wrote it to the House of Representatives and the Senate. It passed overwhelmingly, and we were able to fund a larger task force, which is comprised of all of the suburbs around Indianapolis, adding into that gun task force. And then we also funded it with $10 million in hoping that we would grow the detectives down there by double, if not triple, so we can go after these firearms that we're seeing here in the city of Fishers and all the suburbs to help with that overarching crime that's going on down there, because we know that crime down there just metastasizes out to the city of Fishers. That gun crime task force has grown exponentially in 2021. Plainfield's in it, Greenfield's about to get in it, Lawrence is in it, Carmel's in it, Avon's in it. So several agencies in and around the city of Indianapolis have now joined. Since August, since the money kicked in since August, that crime gun task force has taken 308 guns in the surrounding suburbs of the city in Indianapolis. So it's beginning to take form and have an effect that I think will pay dividends for our city here for years to come, trying to keep that gun play and that violence out of our city permanently. I'll keep updating you that as we proceed. We do think that will play an overreaching effect on the overall homicide numbers. Hopefully, it's already taken effect on the non-fatal shootings down there, so we hope that gunplay correlates to a help with that homicide number that's happening down there as well. And also, Indy is restructured significantly as well to attack guns from multiple angles. And so is the city of Fishers. To us, getting guns off the street remains our number one priority and number one strategical goal, because I believe that is what's going to keep us the most safest as a chief moving forward. With that, as you looked over that goal, did any of you have any questions on those efforts at all?
Chief, how do you define illegal weapon?
An illegal weapon has to have a criminal nexus to it. So this is not a Second Amendment argument. So if we pull a car over and we talk to the occupants and there is a substantial step towards criminality of that occupant or that car, then we may go further into the vehicle. And if we find the weapon, we have to correlate the weapon to some sort of criminal step, and then we can take it. So it's not a Second Amendment legal carry gun permit, because we come across a number of those. We just kick those people loose because they're lawful carriers of firearms. If you, however, are nefarious and have intent of criminality, we will take your gun and we will run it and we will possess it until we figure out if it should be returned to you or not. In most cases, they're not returned. And in most cases, I'm really not giving this the credit it deserves. We have a team that teach this type of stop and this type of questioning. And all guns now are treated like a crime scene, whereas 2 years ago, an officer would come across a weapon and pick it up. We don't touch it. We have an evidence technician come down. We have them process it. and every weapon has its own fingerprint like a human. So we can tell where those guns have been and where they derive from, and then we begin to build a history on the weapon itself. The detective effort downtown, where we place a detective, it is their job then to take the weapons from us and then track down the history of those weapons. So I didn't explain that quite further. So it has to have criminality. It has to have an intent behind it for us to deal with that weapon in particular.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question concerning the carry permit. Does that carry permit, can a police officer know if somebody has a carry permit before if they run their plate or their license? Is that tied together anywhere, or is it just a physical? Is there a database tied together?
Is not a database. In fact, the legislation that's trying to pass is they would create a gun permit database so officers would know that, but we wouldn't know that. We usually know that on the traffic stop if the occupant says, I have a weapon and I have a permit. The officer would then ask for the permit and then make sure the permit is valid, being a valid carrier of the permit, but there's no database that logs into.
Okay, thank you.
Are we seeing more permits to carry?
Yes, exponentially, because there's no fee now. So the state of Indiana doesn't require a fee. It requires a check with a permit, which, you know, is a good subject matter for me. Is there's two reasons why I check everybody that's requesting a permit. One is a background of any kind of physical or, you know, battery, domestic violence, or mental health. Those two things allow me to check into a person that's requiring or requesting a permit from us, but permits are now free in the state of Indiana.
And are they all lifetime permits now too?
Some are, some aren't. They just apply them as they go, but I'm seeing a cross between both of them more. But yeah, there's a lot more. I mean, it slowed down, but in 2020, it was a stack probably every week I get a stack from, you know, the community at large wanting to get a permit. And just to put it out there for you guys, not opposed to a process and a permit and possession and ownership of a weapon. The only thing I advocate openly to the public is if you're going to buy a, you know, $500 to $900 handgun, buy a gun safe, buy a gun lock, and make sure it's not left in your vehicle. We see a lot of guns come out of cars in and around the city of Fishers, which is one of those alarming things that I saw back before we started these initiatives on that strategical goal is, and not just at Geist, right? Those of you who've been around for a while, the discharge of firearms wasn't just at the Geist, it was all over the city of Fishers. And so we monitor that to see where we need to focus our efforts. But I am advocating for safe carry, safe at home, gun locker, gun locks, and not in the car, please. Any other questions on Goal 1? Let's move to strategic goal number 2, which is increase our school resource officer effectiveness regarding school safety. So we continue to, embolden our efforts here through 2020 and into 2021. One of my main overarching worries in the back of my head was a multi-casualty school shooting or violence of shooting or active shooter in our community, in the schools specifically. So, the SROs remain on my mind consistently to make sure we have that touch point in our school system and continue to grow this program in a way. We have 22,000 kids in our community. And so we want to make sure, that middle sentence in our mission statement of, secure the future of our kids, that's very important to us at the police department. And that lies in our school resource officers. So we continue to grow it and grow it back and make sure we have enough officers in our schools. And we've come out with a lot of different things. We did a live thing last week, a Zoom with our community. We had several community members talk about, our threat matrix of how we keep the kids safe, how we monitor who comes back to school, how we work with the schools. And then we also have a high threat response group within the Fishers Police Department that is always focused on our response. And also it covers our predictive measurements as well, but they get out in the community, meet with businesses, try to meet with schools, meet with city buildings, and try to always help to strengthen the thought of a mass casualty anywhere in our city. Any questions about our SROs or our strategic goal number 2? Hard to argue with. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Are we finding any weapons in the schools?
No, not in the schools. I think you saw last week we arrested 2 kids for threats against the schools, and that's a decision that we don't take lightly, because when you start to arrest our youth, it has to be a substantial step, overt threat, and we have to feel that it's viable in order to get to that place, right? So we did make a couple of arrests last week, but we have not found weapons inside the school system.
Good.
And Michigan has brought a tremendous amount of, attention to the safety of our schools, as it always does. And then always it relates back to, Noblesville, and the fact that it happened in our own backyard. So we always got to be paying attention to the safety of our youth.
Sure.
Strategic goal number 3 is increased traffic/DUI car. I've changed this goal this year, and I've moved it to just a traffic car in the evenings. Our community is driving way too fast right now. It is a super fast, pedal down mindset. I don't know if you saw it, but a couple of weeks ago in the department, we began an initiative called Home for the Holidays. And we just took notice. We've had 12 reconstructions, several fatalities here in the last couple of months of different various driving, and just me being out personally in my own patrol vehicle, just have seen people just driving like crazy everywhere in our community. So I called upon the whole agency to take part with me, and I even was out with my own radar gun, which I found to be very rewarding. Quite personally, I was out stopping cars along with the officers, trying to get our community to slow down. And we did a 2-week massive blitz, the whole agency. If you had an enforcement job within the agency, and what I mean is you have to have a vehicle that is set up to stop vehicles. So our detectives didn't participate, but 3/4 of our agency did. I wanted everyone from me down to stop vehicles, make contact with our community, write tickets if need be, write warnings if need be, officer discretion, but just slow people down. And what I did notice right before I went on vacation, I'm on vacation now, what I did notice is I worked a school zone on Friday, and people were driving nice and slow. So the 2 weeks, I think, took heed and took warning, but we have some long-standing goals to build around this as we move into 2022. I want to add to an evening shift traffic car, which is their job to specifically go out and target speed and speed zones. Our neighborhoods are just as fast as our 116th, 126th. We notice it. We take a little offense to it. A little, this is COVID, coming into COVID, and people picked up the pace, and we just haven't quite shook that off. So I think that we have gone out and tried to get as many people home for the holidays as we can as per the initiative. And it will continue with strengthening our traffic unit moving into 2022, and also keeping the enforcement traffic stop angle in our patrol division as a wider goal, not just a specific goal to the traffic unit itself. The other thing I'm going to look to do is buy some more radar trailers and more radar guns in 2022 to keep this, home for the holidays, drive safe, slow down thought process going within our community. Any questions on goal number 3? Good. Goal number 4, implement the Flock license plate system. So Flock is basically a license plate reader initiative. And what it's done for us is we have 10 up throughout the city of Fishers right now, and we are actually finding and solving crimes through Flock. And so it basically has a 30-day hold. It's not something you can just jump into. It's not a Big Brother type of system, but you can enter certain specific search criteria, stolen vehicle, rape, murder, so forth, and that license plate reader will indicate to our vehicles on the street that that vehicle is in our city. In addition to that, if we have a burglary hit a neighborhood, we can go in for 30 days specific to the crime and look for a suspect vehicle that matches description, and that will also give us a suspect in that crime as well. You can't go in arbitrarily and just look and search for people. There's search criteria, and it's documented very well within the police department. We just recently, I keep saying recently, but it's moved on now. A few months ago, there was a murderer here, a wanted murderer out of Mississippi that we caught in one of our houses based on Flock. So we find this program to be very strong. It's helping us to keep eyes out there, especially in our neighborhoods. And what we're doing now is trying to partner with our HOAs and neighborhoods, as if they're interested in purchasing them through the police department, we'll put Flock up at the entries and exits of our neighborhoods as well, because I think it'll help keep our neighborhoods safe. And so any questions on Flock at all?
What's the cost to a neighborhood HOA?
It's $2,500 per LPR reader and $150 setup fee. And then it's set up on city property. So we go into the information when we need to, and then we search out the suspects for the neighborhoods if they have crimes or crime sprees that occur in their neighborhoods.
And how many did you say we currently have?
We have 10, and we'd like to grow that. And we have 10 based upon a grant that Detective Dan Nelson wrote internally in the agency. We wrote a grant and got federal funding and help with that to put those 10 up. Well, 8. And then the mayor also worked with a business on the entry of a business on 96th Street, and they paid for 2 on 96th Street. I think that's a pretty neat 3-pronged approach to partner with our community, partner with our businesses, and then also our police department to try to move this initiative forward. It's kind of unique. Other neighborhoods around us are trying to follow suit on this, and I can't take any credit. I think the credit goes strictly to the mayor on that one. And then I think the credit goes to Detective Dan Nelson, who sat down and wrote the grant and launched the project. And by the way, we're tied into all the cameras Indy has thrown up, and they're throwing up a significant amount. And then any city jurisdiction, so Carmel's coming online, Westfield's coming online, Noblesville's looking into it, Plainfield, Avon, Brownsburg, we can tap into all those Flock systems all the way around the city. So if they're getting in how this would work is usually if Carmel's getting ripped off at cars or burglaries, those people are also taking advantage of us over here. We can now work together more closely to develop suspects unilaterally with Flock.
And the cost
can you explain that?
Cost, or is it reoccurring?
It's reoccurring. It is reoccurring, Warren. Yes. It's how they get you.
The matching process again. I missed something there. You're capturing 100% of the data and then going in after the fact and looking for specific things from that data, or is it capturing the data and matching it against a list somewhere that exists?
So we enter the list when our systems and Fishers go up. We enter the list, and those crimes are wanted for murder, stolen vehicle, wanted for burglary, So those license plates that are attached to crimes, that'll indicate to our cars that they're in our city. The other side of that is if there is a crime and a case number drawn, so we can go in and search the data as long as we have a reason to go in and search the data. But we can't go in and just look for people randomly. Can't do that.
So the out-of-state murder, how did that end up in the Fisher's system? How did you know to look for him or her?
They entered it in Flock in Mississippi. So then it tracks to our Flock here.
Okay.
It's going to go crazy. I want to say, and I'm speaking probably out of line, I think Indy's putting north of 100 cameras up in and around their city. So this is something that I think law enforcement across the U.S. is going to really branch towards, because it's no borders policing, right? It's them entering down there, and if they come here, it'll indicate to us. I think it is unique in the sense of, and it's more affordable than LPR is not new to us. We've ran with Vigilant solutions for years, but they're very, very, very expensive, and we had to put them in very key locations. And we had an LPR car that has antennas on the top that we would drive around Fishers. So LPR is not new technology to the city of Fishers, but Flock system is just taking it to the next level, and they're actually making it affordable, where Vigilant Systems is not affordable. It maybe was $20,000 to get one set up, whereas Flock is $2,500 a camera read.
And that's a web-based. Is it web-based? Yeah.
Yes.
Again, locations are confidential. You have to say that. But are we looking at something you mount on traffic lights? Is this a down low, like a lantern and a landscaping?
Anywhere we can, anywhere that the city is, and so we work with Department of Transportation as well, because believe it or not, if you put something on a highway or a major roadway and it's owned by state, you have to really work with them because they get kind of nervy. So a big slowdown for us was working with Department of Transportation. But yes, we have them up on 96th Street. We have them in areas where people can enter into our community and exit, whereas that's what we're looking for, right? You come up here, you commit a crime, you drive down through a major intersection, we want to capture that.
Okay.
Any others on Vigilant, or not Vigilant, but Flock, I'm sorry. Let's move to strategic goal number 5, which is a criminal investigation supervision edition. So the caseload in our criminal investigations division is large. Ironically, in connectivity to strategic goal number 1, a lot of those crimes are in the city of Indianapolis. So we're getting a lot of crimes committed up here and then back into the city. Well, my detectives have to go down into the city to work those crimes. With the degree in politics and culture in the city of Indianapolis, I don't want my detectives going down into that city unless there's a supervisor present and with them, so we can, cover ourselves, cover our officers, and make leadership decisions so they either get home safe, or if something happens and they're prosecuted, there's a supervisor on scene. Right now, or before, detectives would flow down individually and work crimes and come back. Now they go down in pairs and they go down with leadership, and leadership has to know, just because of the culture and the 2020, the political atmosphere. I just want our officers to be safe. Plus, our span of control in criminal investigations division is now exceeding that of 5-1. So anytime you get into 7-1 or 5-1, you want to increase your leadership to make sure you have the proper guidance for your detectives. And then also going down with that span of control into the city of Indianapolis, I felt very important. So we're increasing our leadership in our detective unit. Any questions there? I got to log in every time I look at the goal. I apologize. Strategic goal number 6 is officer involved critical incident. So we really needed to just, with 2020, we needed to refine basically our what our protocols were going to be for officer involved shootings and critical incident. And so we reshaped policy and retrained our officers on what to expect if they're involved in a critical incident. And luckily, to this point, we haven't had to move on this because we haven't had an officer-involved shooting. But we did go investigate one of the first in Hamilton County ever. We were asked to come into Carmel and investigate an officer-involved shooting over there, because you can't investigate your own shootings because of the temperature of society right now is we'd have to farm that out to be transparent. So we wanted to be an agency that leads in that endeavor. And then we also wanted to lead in how we're going to release that information to our community. And that takes training internally. It takes officer staffing internally. So this policy speaks to that direction for us. Any questions about officer-involved shooting or critical incident response? Guys are good today. We're moving. Strategic goal number 7, our ERG and field force unit. What we found in 2020 is your leader, your chief, was lackluster at best. we had a lot of silent protests. We had a lot of uprisings of people gathering in groups. Now, we were an agency that were trained to respond, and we had equipment, but we hadn't gotten it out enough, and we haven't been doing enough as a city of Fishers to take on what we took on in 2020. Now, we had strategical plans, and we did good, and we responded, and we got through it. But I got to be honest, we were caught kind of flat. So we, along with the other city agencies, because they realized the same as us, in Hamilton County, we got to be able to respond to our own issues. In Indy, they were so tapped out, they would have never been able to come save us if one of our several quiet protests began to get violent like theirs. If we would have had that happen, our response mechanism just wasn't there. So Noblesville, Westfield, the county, and Carmel all stood up ERG response teams to critical incidents such as protests. So everybody has a leader and a team in their agencies. So as a county, we can respond with the same training and same techniques needed if a protest got out of hand and became violent. We have done this, we've stood it up, we've equipped it, and we have our own team in-house, and the other agencies do as well. And I believe that if we have a repeat of 2020, we're more adequately prepared. I'd rather be prepared than lucky. I feel like there was a lot of luck in 2020, and I didn't like that feeling as your chief. So we had to do something. We had to do something better to be able to respond to what we saw in 2020 if it should reoccur again. Any questions on that particular task? Now, I'll tell you guys also that I think a part of that is we didn't respond in a violent manner either. So if you dress your team up in a helmet and you give them sticks, they're going to want to go to a riot. And so we responded to all of our protests, our silent protests, peaceful protests, dressed down and in regular police gear, anticipating the best interaction with our community. And I feel like that response will always be my goal. So my goal is never going to be to put out helmets and sticks. It's going to have that stuff ready to go somewhere, behind a door, behind a wall. But I think that a lot of how we handled ourselves through that year led to the fact that we got through all of those incidences without, our community getting injured or police getting injured. And the biggest one, the first one, there were people that, had criminal intent that were in that crowd. And I think because we responded in the fashion we did, we went out and our street department covered all our rocks with mulch. We did things to just make it an atmosphere of peace rather than try to meet with confrontation. And I think that is why our officers managed to exit 2020 without having a confrontation. That will always be my goal. But also, on the other side of that, as a chief, I have to be prepared for the worst to happen too. If that doesn't meet the needs of the community, we have to be able to protect, our interests up here. So we have to have these professionals trained and ready to go just in case. So just so you know.
Do those protests require a permit?
They do and they don't.
Or a notice?
They do and they don't. We tried to really, work with those groups, and just the mayor kind of kept a philosophy of more of a special events permit, and can we put out tables and can we help keep it peaceful? And I think that is also why we're able to get out of a lot of the things we were seeing with peace, is because we had that approach. That's more of a special events, but in their right to protest is there regardless of whether they work with us, file a permit, or do anything. So, but what we noticed is they did a lot better if we opened up the bathrooms, if we gave them access to water, if we gave them access to tables. So we tried to work with all those groups rather than not work with them or have a denial of a request. So we tried to take it more, and really, quite honestly, Sarah of our parks really met with a lot of them and try to approach it as parks events rather than police events, right? We were on the peripheral for security, but we didn't take point on that. And I think it had a lot to do with getting out of that year just quietly rather than aggressively. I wasn't trying to set a tone of, we're going to rock your world. I was trying to set a tone of, and the mayor was trying to set a tone of, come here, be peaceful, peace will meet peace, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure you have a good event. And that's what we saw happen. But to answer the question, they can set up wherever they want on public property, and you can protest anything, anywhere, anytime, as long as you're on public, not private property.
Ed, what is FEMA certified training?
That means that you can't just stand up a team and say we've trained. So FEMA actually trains ERG or response groups at a national level. So you actually send them and get a certification. So if you have an issue and you return, you have that backing of a nationally recognized organization training your teams. So it's in Alabama is where that training happens or takes place. So we want to make sure we approach it with all the backing and certifications that we could to back our officers and give them the best training possible.
Is that a train type of job?
Yes. And also, too, we can send them to train the trainers in half as well. So we have our trainers in-house, too, because it may be 4, 5, 6 more years before we see another 2020. So I just got to be committed to the long term here and make sure we keep all the equipment and officers in place. Any others? Perfect. Strategic goal number 8 is our wellness in-house. Man, and we've just been making strides here in terms of dealing with, we're no longer, the city of 30,000 with the officers of 50. We're going to shootings now. We're going to incidences now that are requiring mental health and wellness of our officers, and we're seeing that overwhelmingly. So we have a therapist attached to the police department that works with the officers. We have a good wellness program to help our officers try to exit. We've had to learn through some trying times of, I had to learn as a chief to deal with this based upon some of the issues I was seeing in-house. We've opened a wellness room inside the police department where it's physical and mental health. So we've partnered with Protein, who is our in-the-line-of-duty injury through workers' compensation vendors, and they come in and they teach us to work out and they do some proactive stuff with our officers, but also if they're to get injured, they can go right in and get fixed up there at the police department. But also we have a mental health room in there for our officers to go in and do teletherapy or meet with therapists, or just take a time out if they need to do reports in a quiet space. So we also have a wellness committee stood up as per that policy says, to where we can think about all our health. And you may have heard me say it, but there's a triangle here of mental health, physical health, and spiritual health. So we have a good chaplaincy program with a chaplain office for the officers to get spiritual health. We have a good weight room, a good physical fitness policy in place to back our officers stay physically fit. And now we've just come full circle and have the capacity to treat our officers mentally as well, so we can stay as strong as possible. This is important so we can stay strong and stay confident in serving our community. So this is something, none of these events, like there's no in particular one that's out in front of the other, but all of these, including all the rest of them, need mental health of our officers. So any questions on mental health that we're doing at all? And next time you're by, I promise when we meet here in the spring, I'll take you down to the mental health room and prove to you it's there. But it's pretty, I know you guys believe me, I'm being funny, but pretty excited about this. But it just opened 2 weeks ago. It's on the Facebook site. I don't know if you saw pictures of it, but pretty excited about being able to help our officers on site. So it's good stuff. Strategic goal number 9 is parked. We had to park this. We have to reinvent this somehow. What we found is the PAL organization is really for, youth that's probably not able to have a space to go or place to go. And we weren't finding a lot of success in getting grants or any kind of assistance in doing a boxing club per se. So we think we're a little off the mark with our PAL initiative. So we're going to have to restructure that a little bit. We may invest more in like our school resource program moving into 2022. We feel like we're hitting a lot of these through like leadership programs that we're doing within SROs and our SROs commitment and connectivity to our schools. So we think we're going to leave PAL parked and SROs, and we're going to move away from this particular goal. Any questions on our PAL initiative? I think we're moving to the end of it. Yep. So That for me, it's in the command staff. It's always an attempt to set about 8 or 9 larger umbrella goals to move our agency towards, so our officers know where we're trying to move the agency. So if you don't know where you're going, how can you lead them there type philosophy. We just met as a staff, and we're setting up our strategic goals and plans through 2023. I'll have that for you the next time we meet, so we can go over what we're looking at moving forward into 2022 and 2023. I'm pretty excited. We had a really good meeting about where we want to go and where we want to head. A lot of these goals here, most of them have been met. There's a couple that are overarching, moving into the second year, like the traffic position and so forth. But it's just important that you guys understand, why we're doing what we're doing. And people, I get approached by community all the time, and they ask, what's your department doing, or where's it headed? And it's important to get out there in the strategical plan that it's not just guns, it's mental health, it's our schools, it's mass casualty, it's high threat response, it's so many variances that we're working on. So we outline those and try to attack those collectively. And I always share this with the community and the mayor and everybody else so they can see what it is we're trying to achieve internally. And we moved it to a 2-year plan so we could execute it. Our 5-year and our 6-year plans, you get to the 5th year and the department just looks differently. So we moved it to more of an actionable 1 year, getting things done. And then here's the 2nd year and here's what's happening. And we found this to be a successful remedy towards indicating to our officers, what's out there for Fishers and where we headed. So it seems to work for us. Any questions about anything we're trying to get done, things you've heard or things you want to talk about in terms of the police department?
Any staffing answers, additions, subtractions, gains, losses?
Yeah, perfect. So gotten creative and entrepreneurial in my spirit, learning from the mayor. A couple of our task forces add money back into our department, and with that, we're able to grow our intel, a civilian intel analyst. We've added through our grant, through the task force refund, we've added an intel analyst that'll connect to Indy to continue information flowing south and north. So that civilian will come on board in January, and then there's another civilian forensics in the forensic side. When you're doing all this exciting stuff like DNA off guns and fingerprints off guns, you have to add to that so you're successful. So also with money coming back from that gun task force, we've funded a civilian forensics gal who's starting in January as well. She's quite interesting because she was a high school intern. She was an explorer. She went to college. She worked part-time her entire college career up in forensics and evidence, and has become a force to be reckoned with in Indy through forensics collection. And she's graduating Purdue like this. I think she just graduated. Now she's coming on board as a civilian. So a great community story of our youth moving in and being a part of our police department. And then on the merit side, we're getting 3 additional new merit police officer positions from the mayor and from the city. That'll meet the needs of this strategical planning goal moving forward. So I feel like we're supported by the council and staff and the mayor for everything that we would need to move both sides of the house forward.
Thank you for that.
Yep, you're welcome. Anything else?
Good work, Ed.
Thank you.
The one goal that I think, to me, that is touches me more every day is I really love the fact that you're trying to slow down traffic in Fishers. I do agree that it's out of control at some point. I don't know what's driving it, but it's everybody drives way too fast, and I appreciate the effort to do that because I think it will save lives in the long run.
Yeah, I got to tell you, driving around, it was just apparent that, and just from the reconstruction call out aspect, I think we lost 4 people in an amount of like 3 weeks in terms of fatality crashes. And so I think a lot of it plays into that. I think COVID plays into that. I think officer timidness plays into that. I think leadership plays into that, mine in particular. So we're just correcting all that, and I think you're gonna see a lot more enforcement, even past the Home for the Holidays initiative, as we add to traffic and make it a mission here at the police department. So thank you. Anything else, guys?
Great job.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I promise that we'll see in person here, and we'll call it by March, to be fair. We'll do our first quarter in person, and then we'll get back to normal here. I needed to get this done for our bylaws, so I know some of you are on vacation, some of you are all over the place, so this worked out. And I'll do better as a chief, and I'll get us together here in person, and I'll walk you down to the wellness room. But you guys all have my number and contact if you ever had a question or anything about the police department or needed to know, I'm available to all of you. I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I hope you all enjoy your families and enjoy your trips and everything else. And thank you for your continued support.
In closing, thank you. In closing, I'd like to say I think it's a testament to the leadership in Fishers that we don't meet more often than this, that we don't have to get together. I think that's a great sign of good leadership, that they don't need our involvement. The only thing you're sharing with is the program, not our need for investigating police officers. So congratulations to you and your leadership team on that.
You know, I'll add there to that. You know, when we're running through 2020 and a lot of questions came up on how we do business, a lot of our community find it real comfortable that we have a civilian merit board that oversees those types of things. There's a lot of comfort in that. And so this group, you know, never had to call to action on any of it, and I appreciate that compliment. But I think you guys all play a very pivotal role in the community, feeling comfortable that you're there to hear those things if they should come forward. So that conversation came up a lot in 2020 and 2021. So equally, thank you as well. Okay. Get to your families, enjoy your families, and slow down and drive safe right out there.
And enjoy your vacation.
All right, thanks.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.